Oh, there it goes.
All right, so Josh is going to give us a rundown, basically, of what he created here.
Oh yeah, so this is just a jig. It's a fixture that locates all of our important points here for our suspension system. The big thing on these cars is that they're a double wishbone, so you have to locate the upper control arm as well as the shock. And the way I did that is I essentially made brackets that held our knuckles straight up and down, so zero camber. I basically zeroed that out, kind of set our ride height, our control arm angle here about where we want it when it's sitting flat. And then I went to my buddy's shop, who's got a bunch of EG hatches over there right now, which have the same suspension. I pulled a bunch of measurements off of those, including the upper control arm spacing, the pitch of the upper control arm front to rear, as well as the angle of these mounting bolts and all that. And it turns out on these cars, they're completely square. They don't, a lot of cars will actually cheat the upper control arms in one way to give a more progressive caster under compression. This car doesn't. It does all that with the lower control arm. The lower ball joint will actually pull forward through the travel relative to the upper arm, and that's what gives you more positive caster. So yeah, the upper control arm on these is like pretty much square, which is nice. It actually makes it a lot easier for mounting this kind of stuff. Yeah, and then the upper shock, pretty simple. I mean, it's not a suspension geometry part. It just needs to not hit the upper control arm. It needs to be at the right angle and the right height so that when we put shocks off the shelf in here, they actually bolt in and fit and we don't have to adjust anything. So pretty simple there. It was just a matter of tack a bunch of stuff together and make sure it's too strong to move. It's all, this whole structure is just, you know, it's not made to be pretty, it's just made to be geometrically correct. So we're gonna pull this strut brace off because we don't need that anymore. We already have these little plates we put in here. And the whole structure is bolted to the subframe so that once this is all in the car and we build our new frame rails that come through here and have brackets and tabs that pick up all these points, then we can unbolt this thing and take it out and our new frame rail will be in place where we need it. So yeah, just a way of picking up points in free space. This is like the simple version if you're not going to use big giant machines and lots of CAD work and all that. This is the simple version, and it works good. Yeah, I guess I started welding it in some places, but don't zoom in on those. Those are what we call cold pass. Came up with like a much better design than those two tabs.
My God, it looks like it, dude.
Oh, this looks so sick.
I'm gonna take some videos, and I could start on the dash disassembly, right?
That'd be great. Yeah.
All right, for sure.
If we can get the dash, that'd be killer.
I got some work to do.
Yeah. You guys pick up with something like that?
As you guys just heard, Josh needs me to remove the entire dash, basically. He's gonna run to the bank real quick. By the time he gets back, I'm hoping to get all this thing out. Probably not, because I'm slow as fuck. I've never taken this thing out, actually, besides just, you know, like the doubled in bracket right there, but that's basically it. It doesn't look like much, so let's hope it doesn't take me that long, but let's get started. Who does this to a 93 Toyota pickup? Full cage? Anyways, so right now I'm just kind of taking the bolts out, taking the vents out. Obviously this vent has to come out, but so I don't lose track of these screws, I'm putting them right back where I got them from. It just makes reassembly a lot easier as long as I keep these pieces, you know. That goes there. So now this side is kind of loose, right? And now we just look for whatever else is holding this whole thing on. I loosened it a lot though. Oh, what was that? I'm scared. Oh! I was struggling to take it out right now, but I just found this bolt And I'm hoping if I just do this. Motherfucker. Get out. There we go. So the biggest pain in the butt was this like stick basically that slides in and out. Just getting it out was a pain in the butt. I managed to put a flathead and kind of pry it off. Now the whole thing just comes off, so let's continue. This is the first time this thing's ever came off. Oh, and you can see these spike strips are along the whole top. So it has some movement there, but we got to remove a lot of this stuff. Josh said this brace can stay here. He really just needs to run some tubing around it and we should be good. But I'm gonna start disassembling the blower motor and all the vents behind the dash. So let's get to that. It's quite simple. I actually want to keep all this. We're capturing everything on video. You hear me? Anyways. Get off. You know what? For this whole thing, I'm not even gonna struggle. I'm gonna Chris fix this whole thing. He never struggles with anything, alright? Geofix here. And all we gotta do is remove this bracket from this bracket. Just like that. Next, all we gotta do is remove this clip here. Pause. Resume. Don't record this. Don't record it. Easy. Light work. Blower motor's out. Ew, look how crusty this. Knock knock. Who's there? Screw. Screw who? Screw you. I have to take it out from the engine bay. Hold on. If I sing a song, would I get copywritten? Let's go! Let's go. Ooh. So, I finally got the heating element out. It was right here. Now all we have is the diagonal to hold the dash in. And then I loosely took off this harness just so it's not in the way, so that Josh can run his diagonal for the roll cage tucked nicely beneath the windshield. And we'll go from there. Right now I'm just gonna clean everything up here, sort through these screws and bolts and nuts and everything, put them where they belong. If it's on the plastic pieces, it's on the plastic pieces. If it's on the actual dash, I'll leave them on here. That way when I go to reassemble, everything is super straightforward. So I got a lot of plastic pieces left over. This is gonna be a nice weight reduction when it comes down to it.
There's always it's always a little funky when you're trying to mount a K-member or a subframe to a truck frame, because these subframes are made to pick up multiple points on a unibody chassis, and those things have a very organic shape that does not look like two straight frame rails. Mm-hmm. So when you have two straight frame rails, what you pretty much have to do is cut them off and then make something new. One of the easiest ways to do that is with a construction style here. You'd probably see referred to as using tube feet. A tube foot is essentially a piece of tubing with a base welded to it. That base has a hole. You can think of it like a big thick washer welded to the bottom of the tube. I basically have all those lasered in different sizes. They're 4130 chromoly. So the bases are actually very strong, very durable. The tubing is all DOM. This is not a chromoly chassis, mainly because we're welding all this stuff to a truck frame, which is not chromoly, so it doesn't need to be. But there's three tube feet that are picking up this subframe. One in the back corner there that's closest to this factory frame rail, one inboard, and one here. And these are the same 3 points that mount this subframe to, you know, an Integra or a Civic or whatever else it would be in. And we've just kind of replicated that plane using the subframe itself. So there's a bunch of work and measuring, jigging it, getting the subframe in place, and then you actually just use the subframe as a template and lace it all together. We haven't welded this is tacked in, once we get a few more tubes in the car, we'll go ahead and pull the cab back off, pull the subframe off, and weld it all together. But yeah, this is the brains of the operation when you're doing a suspension swap, is getting this subframe in exactly the right place for your wheelbase and your ride height and all that stuff. So this is the biggest step kind of done. Now we just need to finalize this, and then we'll go ahead and do our roll cage and tie it into shock towers and all that stuff.
I'm excited. And I just finished out clearing the inside of the cab. We got no dash in there. I took out all the heater core stuff and all the tubes, vents, nuts, bolts that were in the way. So yeah, everything's clean back here. I got the blower, blew everything out. I'd imagine that hole we have to now run shifter cables and make. I seen that you worked on an 86. That shit was so clean, dude.
Oh yeah, I'm a big stickler for like how everything passes through the cab.
Yeah.
Like on the 86, we went ahead and I made a gasket plate that goes around to the shifter and actually seals the top of the turret to the cab, so that there's no air passing through there at all, no sound, nothing like that. So it makes for a much better driving experience. Anybody who's ever driven like a swapped car, whether it's an LS and a 240 or something like that, most of the time you have this big gaping hole by your shifter and you hear it. You just hear the freeway running underneath the middle of your car, and it sucks. So when we do this, there's a bunch of stuff that's going to go through that, what used to be the shift hole. And we'll make sure all that gets trimmed up, packaged nice and sealed up, so that this thing still drives as nice as it did before the swap. Or better.
Go. Way better. It got more power. So you could see coming off the frame right here, it's the body mount for the roll cage. These are tough. So those are all in there. This looks so good, dude. This looks so good. And this is, you said, a cold pass or something like that?
Yeah, so there's no final welding that's been done. All the welding you see there is like preliminary, or what we call root pass. When we TIG weld chassis, every joint gets welded twice. So we essentially run a root to build, full penetration and get most of the strength in there, and then we're going to run something called a cap pass. And that's where you get that really good looking weld. I think, most people, if they haven't been around TIG welding that much, can't quite tell the difference, but there's a real big difference between seeing a good, well built up weld fillet with really even scales, as opposed to a root pass, which sometimes looks undercut and uneven, because what you're trying to do is even out and get good penetration through the surface and get a good root weld. And then we're gonna go over it one more time, and that's where you get the fancy colors. I probably have some root passes that you guys can see, and then see a cap as well. This is a root pass. So you see the scales there's some unevenness to them. And if you look at the top of the joint, it's actually undercut a little bit. That's not how that weld's gonna stay. This is just our preliminary, get the joint welded, get really deep in there. We run it nice and hot and get good penetration. And then we'll go over it and it'll look like these. Right? And so if you look at these, the scales are very even. The weld is all the way up to the top tangent with the material, and that's the way the weld's supposed to look when it's done. But it's impossible to get that without absolutely melting, burning, and destroying the tubing in one pass.
Come in.